You know, there's a lot of anniversaries, animation wise, that are happening this year. You know, from a Disney perspective, you have Bonkers, if you will, from a 30-year anniversary perspective. You know, to an extent, to the extent you have Rescue Rangers, depending on how you view that. You know, you have the 30th from a non-Disney perspective. You have the 30th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog and Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, both animated shows based on that character and franchise, as well as the 30th anniversary of Archie Sonic, the Sonic comics by Archie Comics, 30 years that began 30 years ago. So you got a lot of anniversaries. Some are even some are even into centuries, if you will, or if not beyond that. For example, this year My Little Pony and G.I. Joe, the Hasbro version of G.I. Joe of the 80s G.I. Joe, if you will, and My Little Pony Generation 1, 40 years. So you have a lot of anniversaries, animation wise and stuff, happening this year. You know, from 30 years, 40 years, 50, you name it. You even have the Disney company celebrating 100 years and Warner Brothers celebrating 100 years. So, big time event, big time anniversaries. But sometimes something slips under the radar that you don't know about is celebrating an anniversary. And as you can tell here on the screen, this is one of those examples. Because back in 1988, Pound Puppies was another one of the most was basically another one of the most popular 80s toy franchises out there. They had been around for at least a couple of years, and in 1988, it was decided by, I believe, Columbia TriStar and Calico Pictures, or Calico Distribution, or whoever it was, but it was decided that they would get a feature film, and they did. And that was Pound Puppies and the Legend of Big Paw. And of course, being someone that was, not even 9 years old at the time, when it got its first television trailer, if you will, I was excited because, of course, I'm 8 years old, going on 9. I'm in like the second or first grade, if you will, first or second grade, and I'm into toys. I'm into a lot of toys, and everything. Toys from like Transformers, G.I. Joe, GoBots. But I was also into the toys that was kind of like cross branding between boys and girls, like Pound Puppies. And I think me and my sisters may have had a couple of the Pound Puppies, but they were very small. The ones that our parents could afford at the time. But when this got announced, it was like, again, just like a lot of the movies that came out based on the 80s franchises at that time, I was excited. I was totally excited to see this movie for myself. Now, unfortunately, like, Transformers and some other films, I didn't get to really see it on the big screen because apparently and historically, this was one of those films that got released. It got released in theaters, but more specifically, it got released for a daytime matinee playthrough, basically during the day, and I'm sure throughout all of Saturday and maybe even Sundays, but mostly throughout the morning to early afternoon. It was one of those movies that would get played for parents to take their kids to and enjoy while the older siblings were the older siblings were in school. So like, let's say a preschooler or someone that wasn't ready for school and everything, or a parent felt they weren't ready for school, this was one of those films that they could take them to and they could actually watch on the big screen without much of a fuss or a ruckus or a line to stand in. And obviously, if this movie is most specifically targeted towards younger kids, that's a good move. Not financially, but it's a good move. Now, the movie itself came out like I said, in 1988. It's celebrating 20, not 30 years, but 25 years this year. That's right, 25 years. And it was released on March 18th, 1988 by TriStar, Sony Pictures, Lionsgate nowadays, but by TriStar and Calico. It was produced by Calico Pictures, as well as was the first animated film distributed by TriStar. So that's what I want to get. That's what I want to get corrected there. Now, according to Wikipedia, and anybody can correct me on this, it was the final theatrical release animated feature from the late 80s to promote a major toy line. And that, because that, according to Wikipedia, was a common trend at the time. Now, of course, it did bomb at the box office, but that wasn't any fault of itself. I mean, yeah, the animation wasn't, very good at times. It was kind of like choppy at times, and there were some errors and stuff like that. But according to, again, Wikipedia, if you believe Wikipedia, during its short theatrical run, and just like I mentioned moments ago, The Legend of Big Paw mainly played in matinees and only grossed 586,938. Yeah, that's not good. That's not good, because the budget was $6 million, and they didn't even make a third of that back whatsoever. They didn't. But again, like I said, it was mainly a movie that, as I said, was meant to entertain a younger audience, and obviously entertain that younger audience is by being showcased, as I just mentioned, and I know I'm saying that a lot here, I do apologize, but be showcased during the earlier times. Now, I'm pretty sure during Fridays and Saturdays it got shown throughout more, shown more, I should say, throughout the day. Like, not just the morning or early afternoon. I'm sure it got a little bit of a late afternoon into evening showcase as well. But because of the fact that, theaters did not give it a long run, like not even entertain the idea of, hey, let's put it, for an evening showing and all that, I think that's why the movie, in my opinion, didn't succeed. But being a kid, of course, I wanted to see it. And as a kid, I enjoyed it. I actually did. In fact, it's still one of my favorite. It's still one of my favorite animated films. I wouldn't say favorite animated films, but one of my favorites to kind of watch. Watch once in a while. Here and there, kind of like a guilty pleasure, if you will. Because if there's one thing about the film that I think some people seem to overlook and forget about, is the music was actually pretty good. Yes. Most of the songs, like At the Pound, King of Everything, All in Your Mind, I'm a Puppy Too, and Puppy Power's Back. Yeah, they were all basically sung to the tune of classic 50s songs. Like At the Pound, based off according to Wikipedia, and I think anybody knows this. At the Pound, based off At the Hop. The King of Everything, based on the song Riot in Cell Block Number 9. All in Your Mind, based off the, song Who Do You Love? I'm a Puppy Too, based off Duke of Earl. Power Puppy's Back, based off Jailhouse Rock. Basically, the music may have been, different interpretations, played, and sang to the music that's more identifiable, I should say, with those classic 50s and 60s songs. But, honestly, again, to me, the one oversight that people seem to, not bring up when they talk about this is the fact that the music was pretty catchy. It may not have been everybody's cup of tea, but I thought it was pretty catchy. As a matter of fact, recently, and I've done this in the past as well, I've done this in the past as well, I should say. I've actually downloaded into an MP3, songs like At the Pound and All in Your Mind and all that, because I thought the songs were good. I thought they were pretty good. and everything. I would enjoy them, and I think anybody that grew up in that time frame, even though the lyrics and the title of the songs were different, would instantly recognize what they're based off of. And I think honestly, too, this is one of those products of the time to where if you were trying to introduce, that Generation X, if you will, which I'm a part of, to what to what their parents, like my parents, grew up with, song wise. This was one way to do it, because then you could just take them aside and say, yeah, that Out the Pound song, that's actually based off this song, and then you could play At the Hop for them, and they would have a better appreciation. They really would. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I really did. And as a matter of fact, because it had a short theatrical run, it did end up on home media. And as a matter of fact, you're not going to believe it ended up on home media, according to this. Family Home Entertainment, a division of International Video Entertainment, distributor of Carlico's library, released the movie on VHS format a year later. That's right, a year later. So, yeah, you had to wait just a bit. You had to wait basically over a year. Although I don't think it really was a year, because I think it did come out later on in 1988, on home video. I think it did. Because I remember it being 1988, and we were living in Fremont, and I think we were living in Fremont at that time, and we had this video store next to, well, we go to Blockbuster, of course, but we also had the video store K-Video, and it was there that I saw Pound Puppies, and I was like, oh, I gotta rent this, and we did. Because, one of the traditions, one of the traditions, for any family, including mine back at the time, was on the weekends, you rent movies, you rent video games, and you have to have at least one family film, live action or mostly animated, for you guys to watch after dinner. And that's what we would do. And it's got to be PG rated or G rated. And that's what we did. We watched, those kind of films. Even Transformers, even though that wasn't really family friendly, as much as people originally thought it would be, we even watched Transformers movie. But still, getting back to what I was saying, like I was getting back to what I was saying, we, ended up renting Pound Puppies, and we watched it there, and we thought it was all, and I think as kids, because I was like 10 years old at the time, when I think I was 9 going on 10 and everything at that time. Yeah, I was 9 years old when it came out, because I think what they originally meant by home video release is not 1989, they meant 1988. So somebody has to fix that, in my opinion. They have to fix that on Wikipedia. But anyway, I remember we watched that, and I enjoyed it. My older sister, who was about 13 at that time, she enjoyed it, and my second older sister, who's currently on the phone with my mom right now, which is why I'm able to record this, and I'm watching and listening to the security to make sure if any interruption happens, I can pause this. But even my second older sister, who was like 11 at that time, enjoyed it as well, because it was a cute film, because it was a cute, passable, harmless film. And my parents, mostly my mom, I think, enjoyed it because again, the songs are very reminiscing, instrumental wise, to what she knows from when she grew up in the 50s and the 60s. Now, a lot of reviews, of course, as I'm looking here on Wikipedia, a lot of reviews obviously back then were not so kind to it. In fact, you had Variety calling it uninvolving and endless derivative, or uninvolving and endless endless derivative, and you have Sacramento Bee deeming it as miserably drawn in comparison to what Disney was offering at the time. San Francisco Chronicle gave it an empty chair rating, and you kind of had a bittersweet review from Detroit Free Press, where they said it was dull and unoriginal, but praised the songs that were written for it. So again, the most memorable thing that people take out of this is the music. Like the animation may be bad, the story may not be good, but it is the music that people take away from this. And I am surprised that even to this day, we did not get a soundtrack, vinyl, cassette, or even CD, or even nowadays MP3, of the songs from the movie. Because again, if there's anything you would praise about the film, it's it's the soundtrack. And I think a soundtrack, honestly, would be the best direction to go to try to really revitalize interest in this film, because this is a 25th anniversary that should at least be talked about and celebrated, but it's not. But however, it was one of those movies that, despite how anybody else felt about it, it stuck with me. It really did. And I think it may have been one of the films that my grandparents had in their library, because they would buy a lot of family stuff, Disney movies and everything, and they'd have it in their cabinets, to bring out for the grandkids and all that once in a while. And I think Pound Puppies and Legend of Big Paw at one point was in there. I'm not really sure. But anyway, it just stuck with me and everything. And then when I found out, back when I was living in Kansas, that this was going to get a release on DVD in the fall of 2006, mostly October 24th, according to Wikipedia here, I knew I had to get it, and I did. What was crazy, though, is when I would try to get it, I couldn't get my hands on it, because every place I would go would say, oh, it's not available yet, or we still got to reorder and stuff. So eventually, when I did get it, I was happy that I did, because now, I could, watch it at any time I want. I can watch it anytime I want and everything. So, so I was just happy to get it, because, like I said, it was something I grew up on, and, I watched as a kid and enjoyed, thought it was good, and, really wanted to just make it part of my collection again, and that's what I did. And I think I was kind of on more of a nostalgic kick. I'm still kind of in that phase a little bit, like anybody that grew up in the 80s and 90s, I'm on, at times I'll be on the nostalgia kick for things I grew up with. And not only did I get this movie, but I remember going online and going to a poster website. I don't know if it was movieposters.com or something, or something like that, or a website like that. But I remember seeing Legend of Big Paw movie poster. And I think I was working for Walmart at that time in Lawrence, Kansas. And I said, I got to get this poster, because it is an iconic poster. It's basically what you see on the screen. It's basically what you see here on, the screen, like right here on the left, if you will. It's basically that. I don't know if it has the movie in the corner of it. I have it stored away in the garage somewhere. I'll have to get it out maybe when my mom goes back to work on Monday. But I'll have to try to get it out, and that's, of course, depending on if I'm not working, because I've applied at Kohl's, several times over to see what happens. But yeah, mainly it's like the poster you see on the left. And I hung it up in my room because of the fact that it's a very iconic poster from the 80s, and animation movie-wise from the 80s, based on something that we all grew up on. Based on something we all grew up on at that time. And I was just, I just wanted to have it in my collection, and I did. And I hung it up in my room, and now I have it stored away, and hopefully maybe someday I'll bring it back out and hang it up again. Maybe. We'll have to see. But yeah, honestly though, I enjoyed the film. As a matter of fact, when I got this, movie finally, on DVD, I decided to watch it again, and that's what I did. So I was really happy to have this and everything finally in the collection to watch whenever I want. Now what I look at, from a positive perspective is, since Lionsgate now has the license, now owns E1, basically the licensing distribution, if you will, for Hasbro, and Pound Puppies is part of Hasbro now, then honestly, I think honestly what Lionsgate should do, because everybody's looking at all the positives that could come out of this new distribution by Lionsgate, home video wise, physical video wise, I should say, and digitally. I think Pound Puppies Legend of Big Paw should be considered for a Blu-ray release. I really do. I mean, all you'd have to do is just up the bit rate to 1080p, 2K if you will, and there you go. You're good to go. Because again, going back to something I talked about before, you pop this into your Ultra Blu-ray player, your Ultra 4K Blu-ray player, or your Ultra HD Ultra 4K Blu-ray player, and this will be seen, and this will be seen on your screen if your television is a 4K television or even 8K. This will be seen. You'll be able to see this, I should say, in 4K or even 8K, depending on what kind of screen you have. So yeah, even if they don't put it on Blu-ray, if you want to get the 4K experience, just pop this into your 4K player, and there you go. If you got a 4K television or even 8K, there you go. You're good to go. But as far as the history of the film goes, I know nostalgia critic Doug Walker. He did a review on this. In fact, it was one of the first reviews he ever did in his first year or two as the nostalgia critic, as that guy with the glasses. And I remember him talking about it. And one of the things he pointed out was, the character was the change in the characters. Excuse me, I had to get some Dr. Pepper here, even though I'm drinking it out of a Coca-Cola glass. But yeah, he talked about the change in the characters, and yeah, you can definitely tell the characters have changed. The character design for the characters did change. There's no doubt from what was seen in the series. Even the origin was rewritten. For the movie from the series. Because a lot of things were different, and you had newer characters added in. You had newer characters added in, like Colette, who is the mother of the puppies that get born at the beginning, and sings the song "Now That You're Here," which is the only original song. Oh yeah, it's the only original song. I'm trying to think there. It's the only original song not based lyric-wise or instrumentally off any 50s or 60s song. It's the only original song based, based on its own, merits. So you have her introduced. You have Beamer and everything, who is what kind of a dog? I can't even think of the kind of dog he is. Let me see if they have it listed here. Let's see. Beamer. What is Beamer? Let me see. Beamer. I know they have it in here somewhere. Let's see. Let me see here. Hold on. I'm trying to see here on Wikipedia the Scottish Terrier. That's right. So you had Beamer get introduced, who's a Scottish Terrier, and you had Reflex, who is a Reflex. What is he? Old English sheepdog, a Schnickerdoodle, Old English sheepdog. Who basically he's kind of like a little bit of the comic relief, if you will. Kind of like the so it's kind of like the comic relief, if you will, because the comedic thing because the comic relief that he's known for here, at the beginning of the film and during the climax, is he turns into a lovesick puppy whenever he hears the bell ring, kissing everyone he sees, shouting he loves them. So, and basically this element of his, which is comedic relief, is used later on to basically, help save the day, if you will. But yeah, you have Colette, Beamer, and Reflex as dog-wise that are introduced, and then you have the Pound Purries, Hairball, and Charlemagne, who are cats that are introduced, and that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool to see. And Frank Welker and Kathleen Cavadin voice Hairball and Charlemagne. And Kathy Cavadin voices Charlemagne, and Frank Welker voices voices Hairball, and Kathy Cavendish also voices Colette. So she does two roles. So basically what they had here essentially was the original cast, most of the original cast in the series, reprising their roles. Not everybody, but most of the original cast, if you will. But yeah, the designs were different. There's no doubt about it, and the origin did change, and that's something we still see to this day. That's something we still see to this day, to where, even with the recent Netflix theatrical streaming, with the Netflix, streaming / theatrical Marvelous movie that they brought out, Marvelous Ladybug and Cat Noir movie that they brought out, because apparently that movie that they brought out on Marvelous Ladybug and Cat Noir is like a retelling of the origin. Even though if you follow that series for as long as everybody has, the origin has already been told numerous times. Whether it's in the show or made for streaming or made for television movies or specials, it's been told numerous times. Well, this is like a complete retelling of it from a feature film perspective. And again, that's a practice that has been used for a numerous amount of years. Even going back to 1988, with Pound Puppies and the Legend of Big Paw. Even going back 2 years prior to Care Bears Movies 2, New Generation. So animated and live action films based on a lot of properties are known to do this. Even though we might know the origin, they always have a different take on it or different retelling of it. Take a look at Mutant Mayhem, for example. That's a completely different take on the Turtles on the Turtles and Splinters origin. More, that's a different take than all the other ones that have been a little different, but pretty much the same retelling of the origin all the time. This is like a completely different, take on it, and it's a take that, kind of stays true to the original, but not really. It goes off in its own direction, where the others are, different to an extent to where most of it is identical beat for beat, but then it goes off and does certain things. This one, apparently, in Mutant Mayhem is, its own, like it starts out almost beat for beat, but then just takes off and does its own deal, if you know what I mean. But yeah, again, it's not the first. But yeah, again, Pound Puppies and Legend of Big Paw doing it, not the first time, because now you're seeing it even now, still continuing to this day with Mutant Mayhem, with Marvelous Ladybug and Cat Noir's movie, and probably going to be happening for more times, to come and everything. Even if you know what the origin is or have an idea of what the origin is because you've watched the original, telling of it, or one of the original tellings, even if you know that, there's always going to be a chance someone's going to say, let's start out over for the newer audience that may not know what's going on, so we can have a fresher start for them, if you will. And that's pretty much what they do. Now, one of the things that some people have said, one of the things that people said have really hurt it is the animation. The animation was overseen overseas by Wang Film Productions and Cuckoo's Nest Studio. There were two companies out of Taiwan, that were known for doing a lot of animation for shows like, let's say, Rescue Rangers, Bonkers, Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Satayan, believe it or not. They've been known to help out in those areas. So, for them to be part of this, you can definitely see that, especially with some of the animation errors that we see, throughout the movies and everything. Because there's like certain characters that will be in a picture when they're not supposed to be, and things like that. There'll be certain like colors missing off the characters and and all that. It's one of those, it's one of those distinct, traits from a well-known animation studio, especially an overseas animation studio. It's one of those well-known traits that you come to know in a lot of the productions they're part of, and you see it in Pound Puppies and a Big Paw. But I think what really hurt it, though, and this was according to Pierre Del Celis, who was also an art director and directing storyboard artist. According to what he said, production took 5.5 months, starting in the fall of '87. He says the first 2.5 months were spent on preparing its layouts and storyboards, and the remaining time on the animation, backgrounds, and shooting. So basically, what he's saying there is, if maybe they were given a little bit more time, maybe they could have pumped out something, animation-wise, a lot better. But given the fact that they were given literally less than 6 months to get this done, sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. But it's all up to the people involved and whatnot. But outside of that, you look at a lot of animated films that have been theatrical released, some that have gone on to be major hits and all that, even from the biggest animation studios and distributors, and they too have animation mistakes. So even some of the most cult classics do. And there's no denying that. So I get where he's coming from. I get where he's coming from when he says this, that he probably feels that if they were given maybe 6-8 months, maybe a year to get this together, they could have, animation wise, they could have had something really, really top notch, really special, if you will. But outside of that, like I said, even the classics, have animation errors and mistakes in them that you can't deny. You can't deny, and everything, but you can't overlook because the rest of the movie is pretty good. So that's it. There's that, if you will. Hold on for a second. So yeah, it's one of those situations to where what can you do about the animation? Again, like I said, I think the other thing that may have hurt it was it didn't get a chance to really get a full theatrical playthrough. Like not just the matinees for the younger kids and all that, but mainly like throughout the day and into the evening, if you will. Again, I do believe it may have gotten that on the weekends, like Fridays and Saturdays, but outside of that, it didn't really get a chance to shine. And I think if it would have been given more of an opportunity to shine, not only would the box office be a lot better, or would have been a lot better, not entirely, but it would have been decent enough to where maybe they could have made at least 1 million, at most, or close to it. Then I think people wouldn't be, I don't think people would be crapping on it, the way they did. But I think, for those of us that grew up in the 80s and everything, the reason we're not so harsh on this film, even looking back on it now, is because of the fact that, it's a product of the time. Because you got to remember, between 86 and up until about 1990, up until about 86, 1990. Sorry about that. But like I said, between 86 and up to, I'm assuming, 89 at the latest, again, this is a product of the time to where movies were animated films, sometimes live action, but mostly animated, that came out in theaters, were based on, toy products, based on toys that had already been turned into shows. Like I said, you had Transformers, you had GoBots, you had G.I. Joe, you potentially were going to have Gem, had things not gone awry, and everything with the Generation 1's My Little Pony movie and Transformers the movie bombing at the box office and all that. So it's a product of its time, and its main purpose, whether we want to admit it or not, was to sell toys, just like the shows that it was based on was meant to meant to do the same thing. That's what the movie was meant to do as well. And I think that's why a lot of us look back on it with, such fondness. We may criticize it, as grown-ups now and say, yeah, they could have done better with the animation and all that. They had all this potential and everything. But, outside of that, it's, to me, it's a fairly harmless film that if you ignore a lot of the negativity and criticism about it, it's, it's like I said, it's a harmless film that you could just sit back and enjoy, pass the time with, have on in the background, and go from there. So to me, I think it's just one of those situations to where I think, the production was rushed out when it should have been given more time. And it was basically, like I said, it was basically put into a situation to where I think, honestly, they felt that, well, if all the other animated films based on, toy products at that time, which were based, which had shows of their own, were not doing so well theatrically, with full length, playthroughs throughout the day, then what chance would Pound Puppies have? So I think that's why they limited, its playability throughout. I think that's why they did it. But, outside of that, I think it is just a film you can, like I said, put on in the background and enjoy. Maybe, even watch once in a while and just be like, yeah, it's harmless. It's not bad, and all that for what it is. I mean, its runtime is what? What's its runtime here? Its runtime is basically, I think if they have it, I think they have the runtime here. I think it's about 78, 76 minutes, I believe. So, yeah, I think that's what it is. Just trying to see here. Yeah, it's about, about 78 minutes. So, it's just something I could tell you. You can put it on the background while you're cleaning your room, maybe rearranging stuff, or cooking, making yourself lunch or whatever, or working on something, and you want to just, turn your head like that and watch what's going on. It's one of those kind of films. And if you do want to watch something, that, again, will, be harmless to watch, and, while you're, maybe, let's say, eating lunch, or you just want to relax and everything, you could put something like this on. Again, I think the only memorable things people take away from it is the music, which again makes me wonder why they didn't get a soundtrack release for this vinyl, cassette, CD, or even nowadays digitally. It makes me wonder. So hopefully maybe we might see a change in that over time. But I thought it was good. I thought it was good, I thought it was a good little, like I said, harmless film. It's one of those guilty pleasures that I like to probably go back and watch once in a while and, and enjoy. It really is. Now, for anybody that may not have the DVD, I can tell you honestly that you could go to the Internet Archive, archive.org, I believe, and you can find the movie there. All you have to do is Google Pound Puppies Legend of Big Paw, look in the video results that Google will give you, and one of the first things you should see is the full-length movie at archive.org. And if you can find it there, I recommend watching it. If you can download it and burn it to a DVD, I recommend doing that too. But yeah, it's it's out there. It's out there for anybody to enjoy, and when they want, at archive and at the archive.org. And yeah, if you want to watch something or have something in the background that's harmless, or watch something to kind of keep yourself a little entertained while, let's say, you're just eating lunch or something, this will do it, especially if you grew up on it like I did. But yeah, it's hard to believe it's been 25 years since it got released, and hopefully we'll get a Blu-ray release down the line, since now Lionsgate has E1 under the roof. Hopefully we'll get a Blu-ray release of this soon. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. What do you think, looking back on it 25 years later, what are your thoughts on Pound Puppies: The Legend of Big Paw? How did you feel about the film when you first saw it? Let me know what your thoughts are. Comment down below. You'll also get a version of this at BW Rosa's Discussions, which is my podcast on Spotify and other podcast affiliates, but mostly on Spotify. Check it out there. And really, guys, just give me your thoughts. How did you feel about the movie when you first found it, or first found out about it, or first saw it? You know, is it something that you enjoyed as a kid? Let me know. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. I'd love to know what your thoughts are and everything. And do you think maybe if it would have gotten a more fully played theatrical run, you know, from day into night, do you think that could have helped it as well? And do you think maybe if that wasn't that, they could have at least got, you know, a full playthrough in theaters on the weekends, like Fridays and Saturdays? Let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are, and what did you think of the music? Give me your thoughts on that and everything. And yeah, that's all I can really say. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, guys. Love to hear them. What did you think of the new additions of the characters? Of the new characters? Let me know. And until next time, guys, I will talk.